Good afternoon, students. I am Babita from Department of English. So today we are going to talk about sonnet and its type. Okay. The content for the lecture are so today we are going to read a definition of sonnet, types, and then we will talk about each sonnet individually. Okay. So I'll start with the introduction of sonnet. Poetry comes in different kinds: ballad, ode, elegy, dramatic monologue, lyric poetries, and sonnet is one of them. Okay, just like ballad, which is a folk kind of a poetry, which was originally being initiated with the oral form of stories, and from then on only we just somewhat similar we got sonnet. Sonnet, if we have to define, or a kind of simple definition would be 14 lines of poem. So traditionally sonnet was a poem or is a poem that consists of 14 lines, and it comes with the music. So whenever we are reciting a poem which is of 14 lines, we always have, or primarily we used to have music in accompaniment of it, just to exemplify or to just aesthetic, to give it aesthetic beauties. Okay, so sonnet, if we have to define sonnet, sonnet will be 40 lines of poem. And if we talk about the thematic structure and theme of sonnet, so initially sonnet started with as a love poem. So major theme or initial theme of sonnet was love. It was much later, or the poets that came in different eras and centuries, that they gave us new kinds of themes. So now we can say that sonnet is just not something which is a kind of a love poem, a romantic poem. We have political sonnets, religious sonnets, spiritual, among other ones. Okay, so now I'll talk about the types of sonnets. So sonnet is something which had its roots, or which has its roots in Italy. For the very first time in the history of literature, sonnet was being introduced by a very famous Italian poet, and who was known as Petrarch. Petrarch was someone who gave birth, or you can say who introduced us to this kind of poetry. In the 14th century, he gave the sonnet, and that's why the first kind of sonnet comes, or you can say is being named after him. It is also known as the Italian sonnet, since it comes from the Italy, and is also named after the name the one who gave this, that is Petrarch. So first is your Italian and Petrarch sonnet. Okay, and now if I have to give you the in-depth study of Petrarch sonnet, I would say that for primarily or majorly we have divided Petrarch or Italian sonnet into two parts. Since the sonnet has 14 lines in it, so the starting 8 lines of the sonnet, of Italian sonnet, are being divided into octave, and the remaining 6 that have been are called as sestet. Okay, and I will also add on this that a sonnet has an intricate rhyme scheme. That is, it will always have a rhyme scheme. And so Italian sonnet, since it is being divided into 2 parts, so octave has its own rhyme scheme, and so does has your sestet. Octave have rhyme scheme of ABBA, ABBA, and your sestet will be having the rhyme scheme of CDE, CDE, or it can also has the rhyme scheme of CD, CD, CD. And octave, and how we classify, or how we divide your what lines will be your octave comes into octave, or what will your sestet convey in the poem, is that octave is something which either puts a question to the reader or the audience, or it can just give or propose an idea to it. The remaining 6 lines they will give you in-depth version, or give you an answer, or they will either comment or criticize upon the given question or the idea. Okay, just to convey or just to clear what I just said here, I would rather give you an example. That is, this is a poem by your Edwin Elgin Robinson, The Thieves. What I just said is that it is a 14-line poem, and it has its own rhyme scheme on it. Octave will be having ABBA, ABBA, and your sestet would be having the rhyme scheme of CD, 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 or if his third line would be changing, then it can have CDE, CDE. Okay, so this is the very famous or the most commonly used sonnet, that is the Italian sonnet. From the roots of it, or you can say the second version came just a slight deviation from the Italian sonnet. Italian sonnet is the original form of sonnet, for any kind of sonnet. All the other kinds of sonnet that we have in English literature today are one way or the other way are being derived or being inspired from the Italian sonnet. Okay. So, as I told you, the poem that we just had was something, it has the rhyme scheme of ABBA and CD. This is your octave part, and these are for your sestate. Okay. So, now, and one more thing, since sestate is something which turns the poem, or you can say it gives you the answer for the above question that you put on the above 8 lines mentioned above. So, you can also call your sestate as the volta. Volta means that is the turn in the poem. Okay. So, now I will talk about the second type, that would be your English sonnet, or we also call it as the Shakespearean sonnet. As we all are aware of who Shakespeare is and how great roots he has in English literature. So, it was his scholars, that were Thomas White and the Earl of Surrey, those had their hands on the writings, or you can say the sonnet collection of Shakespeare. Had it not been Thomas White and Earl of Surrey, we might not never get to read, or we might have never came across the writings of Shakespearean sonnets. So, Shakespearean sonnet is something which has its name Shakespearean sonnet because it is being, for the very first time, it was being introduced by himself, and since he comes from England, or you can say he uses the language English for writing, so that's why it has been named English and Shakespearean sonnet. Okay, if someone asks you for the very first time that who gave us the English or Shakespearean sonnet, we will never be saying that it was being given by Shakespeare. No, it would be wrong to say, because he was the one who just wrote it down. It was Thomas White and the Earl of Surrey, the very famous scholars, or the ones who had done in-depth study on Shakespeare's writing. Okay, so English sonnet is somewhat driven from Italian sonnet only. The major difference between the earlier one and this one is that where we read in Italian sonnet that it had an octave and sestate, whereas this Shakespearean sonnet will be having 3 quatrains. A quatrain is something which has 4 lines in it. Okay, so now Shakespearean sonnet is something which has 3 quatrains, and the remaining 2 lines will be known as a couplet. A couplet is something which has 2 lines in it. So, Shakespearean sonnet has 3 quatrains and 1 couplet, and each quatrain of Shakespearean sonnet has its own rhyme scheme. Here I have given you the famous example, that is a prologue from Romeo and Juliet, that is also written by Shakespeare only. Here you can have that we will be having 4 quatrains, we can divide these into 4 quatrains, and each quatrain has its own rhyme scheme. That is, first quatrain will be having its own rhyme scheme, second one will be having its own, and third one will be having its own. So, first one has your rhyme scheme of AB, and the second will be having your rhyme scheme of CD. Similarly, third will be having rhyme scheme of your EF. And the remaining 2 lines that we call as couplet will be having rhyme scheme of GG. And how we divided it comes in the question now, that just like your Italian sonnet where octave proposes the idea or puts a question, similarly here as well we will be doing it, that each quatrain has its a question. The question that we put in the first quatrain will be further followed by the remaining 2 quatrains. And the couplet, that is your last 2 lines, what they will be doing is that they will be giving you the commentary upon those questions, or they will be concluding, or just you can say they will be giving you the indifferent spin, or you can just say giving you the different aspect of the above question that we put in the Shakespearean sonnet. Okay. And all these sonnets that we have read so far, or the remaining one that is going to read later in time, they all 3 are written in iambic pentameter. So, iambic pentameter and rhyme scheme are the major qualities of a sonnet. That is, it's gonna have its own rhyme scheme, and all these sonnets are being written in iambic pentameter. And iambic pentameter is where penta means 5, so it means every line is having 5 meter in it. Okay, So now I'll come to you the last kind of sonnet, that is was being introduced by another Elizabethan poet, that was Edmund Spenser. Spenser, in his very famous poem, as you all have heard of, if not have read, is Amorti. Amorti is a poem where he derived somewhat different direction, that is, or he didn't had its own rhyme scheme. He gave a different kind of spin to your Shakespearean sonnet. Okay, so in Amorti, what he does is that instead of having rhyme scheme of A B C D as we have read in your Shakespearean sonnet, what he did, he just somewhat, we can say that he gave a complex rhyme scheme to your third kind of sonnet. That's why it has been called as your Spenserian sonnet. Spenserian sonnet on theme, writing style is not different from the other two styles. The only difference that it has from the remaining two is that it gives you a kind of a complex rhyme scheme. As this is his famous poem Amorti, for the very first time where we got our third kind of sonnet, that was your Spenserian sonnet. So here what he has done is that instead of having a rhyme scheme that every alternate is rhyming from the preceding one, what he did is that he just had A B, or you can say in the next 4 lines what he did is that B, C, and then in the last quatrain he had his C D, and the couplet has the rhyme scheme of your G. On just like Shakespearean sonnet, Spenserian sonnet also has the 3 quatrains in it, and it also has a 1 couplet. See, the major difference between Shakespearean sonnet and your Spenserian sonnet is that the rhyme scheme is different, the language is also different. Where we had iambic pentameter, somewhat slight differences between your Spenserian sonnet and Shakespearean sonnet. Okay. So this is it. Thank you.